And of course, Amnesty International and Zimbabwean lawyers for human rights condemn month-long detention of Coalition for Change leader and 78 activists. The human rights group condemned the decision by the Zimbabwean High Court on Wednesday to uphold a lower court's ruling denying bail to an opposition party leader and 78 activists who were arrested last month. Jameson Timba, who took over as party leader as Citizens Coalition for Change after Nelson Chamisa quit in January, was arrested along with other party youth in Harare for holding an unauthorized gathering. Now joining me on the program is Nozipho Zypo Moyo. She's actually a political analyst. She joins me on the program. She joins me virtually. Thank you for joining in, Moyo.
Thank you for having me.
All right. What do you make of this recent development as regards the detention of these leaders? Is it in line?
It's definitely not in line, but it's not surprising. One thing that is becoming a trend after the new dispensation is the arrest of political opposition leaders. If you go back, you'd remember Huru Mako, who is now an asylum seeker in England. And from there, we had Job Sikalo, who spent more than a year without bail. And after his release, we have the current 74 to 80 people who have been denied bail. This came a few hours after the president had actually read the Right Act to say, if anyone is found to be wanting to cause disturbances, we will deal with you. And that was the threat from the president. And a few hours later, these people were arrested on 16 June, which was actually the day of the African child. So the trend, it's proving that we're having a hostile environment where opposition leaders are not being tolerated by the ruling party. Thank you.
All right. Now, they were charged, or some of them were charged with gathering with an intent to promote public violence and, deny bail by the magistrate court. And Amnesty International, for instance, demanded their immediate release and described their imprisonment as lengthy and baseless. I'd like you to speak to this. Also, given the fact that on this same program, I had conversations with Nelson Chamisa just after the elections. And, even though he wasn't, pretty much comfortable with the internal politics within the party, this happening to him, I would also like you to speak on that too.
Okay. So to understand the context, when Jameson Timba came in as the opposition leader after Chamisa's quit, Chamisa quit the opposition because there was infiltration which was done by ZANU-PF, the ruling party that runs government. This was when Chabangu had recalled, claimed to be the Secretary General of the opposition. And as we speak, he has been appointed as the opposition leader for the opposition in Zimbabwe Parliament. So it's a messy scenario because that's the reason why opposition leaders felt they should leave Parliament, drop out, because the leader, everyone knew and everyone believes Chabangu is for the ruling party. However, we should note that when these people were voted into power, they were voted by the demographics, the constituencies. So now we've got opposition leaders who are in Parliament having an opposition leader who they do not adhere to. And after Chamisa decides to jump ship, they're regathering themselves, and we have Jameson Timba trying to rock the boat, and we have the government now arresting them because for them, the agenda is to have a one-party state. As long as the ruling party has 2/3 of representation in Parliament, that is the goal the opposition has, the ruling party has. So when it comes to opposition, mobilizing and organizing itself, that is the threat. These people were arrested, seated for a meeting. They did not have any weapons or anything. The level of abuse and beatings they received from a riot police of all ranks indicates how the state finds them as a threat. So this is the state trying to silence opposition leaders. Thank you.
All right. Now, the CCC actually said the decision by the court was unjust. In their words, they said despite bail being a constitutional right, the regime is blatantly denying innocent citizens this fundamental right. End of quote. I'll still go back to the interview I had with Chamisa. He inferred that the party, had been compromised. Now this is happening. I mean, what do you say to that?
The party was compromised, but right now it's not even about the party being compromised. That right now it's about the state squashing the loose ends as the opposition is trying to regroup. We should understand that the current scenario in Zimbabwe, we have an issue between the constitution and constitutionalism. The current new dispensation, which is run by the current leader, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has proved that it does not follow things by the book, by the law. And that is why we have had many cases where eventually the state is proved to be wrong. And even when it comes to human rights abuses, the highest number of human rights abuses and violations are recorded coming from the state and from the ruling party. So this is the state trying, I repeat, to shrink the space for civic and opposition leaders.
Now, let's move away from that. Let's talk about the administration of President Emmerson Mnangagwa. How would you describe it and also rate it, particularly in terms of human rights activities?
It is not a secret that the new dispensation, as they call it, there is nothing new, but is actually a pseudo or a mirror of the late President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. And more importantly, the current dispensation is more brutal than what we have experienced before. Coming in of Emmerson Mnangagwa has seen a lot of laws from POSA to MOPA. These people were arrested under the MOPA when you talk about the freedom of assembly. And this is the same government that has pushed the cyber and data protection law, where it's closing the virtual space. Right now, we've got the private voluntary organizational bill, which is trying to squash civic society, where they need to monitor civic organizations. That is an act that is a bill that is being debated in Parliament. And we also have the Patriotic Act, which says if you speak anything or criticize the current government, you can be charged for treason. So all those laws that are coming in since the contested win from Emmerson Mnangagwa proves that we have a brutal government that is having the highest number of human rights violations of the state against its citizens, and the ruling party which he runs against the citizens.
Okay, but the administration has described some of this agitation and protest as baseless and a distraction.
So that for me, it's not baseless and distraction. It's strategic, so that anyone who wants to speak against the government, they're whipped in line, people are forced to be gagged. But the real thing, as I'm saying, Emmerson Mnangagwa wants to run. Allegations have been there, claims that he wants to run for the next term, meaning 2030 he will be here. And he himself last week had to say, oh, I follow the constitution. If people want me out, I'll be out. So as I'm saying, the current ruling party, ZANU-PF, wants to be in power. And the people running the current ruling ZANU-PF are there to benefit, and they are trying to make sure they're relevant, whatever happens in the future.
All right, now let's talk about the economic situation, particularly for an average Zimbabwean citizen. With all of this political upheaval and the economy on one hand, I mean, where does this leave an average Zimbabwean?
So we're back to an economic glitch. The government has introduced ZiG, a new currency, which is really an extension of the barrier checks and the Zimbabwe dollar. But if you base the power of the Zim dollar to the United States, it is struggling. There are many issues that come into play when it comes to service delivery. the government has been failing to provide healthcare. Right now, Zimbabwe is facing the highest number of maternal rates, mortality rates since 1980, after the new administration. We have issues of basic water and sanitation, which the government has failed to provide for the two metropolitan cities. Everything that has been happening around the roadways infrastructure has been clogged with tender scandals. The inflation is coming up. When it comes to unemployment rates, everything is up. So it's people are talking. If it's not about the social needs and their right to freedom of expression, it also comes to the economic emancipation that they fail to achieve.
I mean, how does this rub off on the country, particularly when it comes to both regional and international outlook?
It is not a secret that xenophobia in South Africa, when it's done, South Africans would say, Makwere Zimbabweans, they feel Zimbabweans are responsible and other foreign nationals, including Nigerians. But mainly Zimbabweans, Nigerians, and Mozambicans have been flagged in South Africa in xenophobia attacks, being responsible for disabling or trying to disable the economy. If you look at issues of money heists, Zamas were the illegal gold miners. It is alleged that these are the foreign citizens coming in. So what am I bringing in? Our problems have extended to outside, where our neighboring countries are also having challenges and where their citizens feel they're being choked by the lack of our leaders to deal with our chaos at home.
All right. Now,
so even when it comes to issues of visas and all, you notice that Zimbabwe has more restrictions on visas because people do not want to take the burden that the leaders have failed to deal with.
All right. My final question to you is this. Do you think all of the pressure from both rights group locally and internationally would force the government to have a rethink, particularly on the detention of these opposition leaders?
It's a game of chess. It's really a game of chess. Unless and until the government has something to win by letting them go, will they decide that they need to let the detainees go, just like what happened with George Sikala. But for me, I feel as the Zimbabweans, the only way they can get out of this messy scenario, the answers do not lie with opposition parties, neither do they lie with civic society. And it's time we learn from Kenya, where it's the citizens themselves who push for that change. So unless and until citizens are pushed beyond political affiliation, tribe, and economic class, do we have a clear voice and demand what we need from our current leadership.
Do you think that would ever happen? Maybe a replay of what we're seeing in Kenya?
It will be a struggle. As I explained, the reason why we have the government bringing in these acts in parliament, where we talk about cyber, it will criminalize you trying to mobilize online. If you talk about PVO bill, if you're a civic society or organizing group, if you receive any money that seems to threaten the government, that is treason. If you talk or say anything against or criticize the government, that is also treason. So all these acts are coming in to choke and control the citizen. And unless the citizens are really fed up, do we have the new, for me that would be the new dispensation, outside political leaders. Our political leaders, even Chamisa himself, failed as an opposition leader to have a robust party which was not infiltrated. Sisi was never the answer. ZANU was never the answer. Citizens of Zimbabwe have the answer to run their politics.
All right, Nozipho Zypo Moyo, political analyst, thank you so much for joining me on today's conversation.
Thank you for having me.